time. And so we have to go to Mr. Tom Cotton of Arkansas.
And I would simply say that perhaps we would be in an even better place if we had not relaxed the sanctions in November, but increased them, as this committee attempted to do last summer, followed by House action, or perhaps if we had taken a different course in 2009 during the Green movement. But that's neither here nor there. Some of you may know the parable of the frog and the scorpion. The frog is at the river. The scorpion approaches him and asks for a ride across the river, and the scorpion says, or the frog says to the scorpion, "But you'll sting me and kill me." And the scorpion says, "I would not do that, because then we would both drown." And the frog says, "That's a good point." So the frog gives the scorpion a ride across the river. And halfway across, the scorpion stings the frog, and the frog looks to the scorpion and says, "Why did you sting me? Now we'll both drown." And the scorpion said, "Because it's my nature." The problem here is not the nature of the weapon, but it's the nature of the Iranian regime. They continue to be the world's #1 sponsor of state terrorism, whether it's Hezbollah or Hamas, that not just attacks our allies, like Israel, but tries to launch attacks in the United States, assassinating the ambassadors if they could have executed their plan of friendly countries in restaurants just a few miles from here, or killing soldiers with whom I served in Iraq in 2006 by importing fighters and bombs and other material. I am deeply skeptical, as are my colleagues here on this committee, that any of this will ever change, no matter how skillful our negotiations, unless the regime in Iran changes. It's been like this for over 30 years. And unfortunately, I think it will continue to be like this until the people of Iran have a legitimate, democratic, representative government. Now, all that said, there are issues related to Iran besides this nuclear negotiation, such as their meddling in Iraq or their support for Bashar al-Assad in Syria, their ongoing support for Hezbollah and Hamas. One of our negotiating partners, Russia, has ongoing issues as well, such as their invasion of Ukraine and supplying thugs that shot down a civilian airliner, and their support for the Bashar al-Assad regime in Syria. So I would like your brief assessment on whether they bring those issues to the negotiating table on this, and if so, how.
Thank you, Congressman. So far, everyone has been focused on what goes on in the negotiating room around this comprehensive plan of action, or the possibility of a comprehensive joint plan of action. And although we were in Vienna at the time of the horrific events in Ukraine, my Russian colleague, Sergei Ryabkov, who is a longtime professional diplomat in Russia, stayed very focused on what could be done to try to move this comprehensive negotiation forward. I cannot tell you that all of these issues won't come into the room at some point, and it certainly does create strains around the margin. We're all human beings, and that was just beyond deplorable and shocking, and we were all just completely stunned at what was occurring. Similarly, I think that what's happening in Iraq with ISIL, or ISIS, if one looks at it in Syria, is something of concern. And in that instance, ironically, Iran is probably as interested as we are in getting rid of ISIL, but it is not something on which we make common cause, because there are so many other areas in which we have vast and unbridgeable disagreements in terms of their state sponsorship of terrorism, their human rights record, and what they do to foment instability around the world. And as you say, their relationship with Iraq is a long and complicated one. And I thank you for your service to our country, not only here, but in Iraq, in what is now a very difficult circumstance for that country. So right now, everyone stays focused. It is a constructive, serious negotiation. I hope it remains that way, but I can't tell you for sure that it will. The world's a pretty complicated place at the moment.
Well, thank you. Again, I remain deeply skeptical of the joint plan of action, but I do wish you the best of success, that we can reach an agreement that completely eliminates Iran's nuclear weapons program and ancillary programs, not just for our sake, but for the sake of peace and safety around the world.